UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Welcome to Franchise Fatigue, the United Federation of Podcasts, little podcast where two nerdy boys go through their love of sequels and reboots and remakes, and we go through our favorite franchises, we watch them all, and we talk about them because we love sequels, don't we, Zach?
Some sequels we love.
Some sequels, like this one?
That remains to be seen. Let's
I
talk
don't
about
know.
it.
Well, this is episode 2. And I'm your host, Brandon-Shea. Joining me, as always, is Zach Moore. And we are right in our Mission Impossible series of movies, and we're talking Mission Impossible 2. And I couldn't think of anybody better to join us than our good friend, Mike Schindler. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for bailing us out and having a good guest on our show.
Damn, I don't know who you had for episode 1, but I feel bad for them.
He was quiet the whole time. He didn't say a word.
Didn't say a word.
Okay.
Yes, you have the honor of being our first guest, Mike, so welcome aboard.
Hey.
Excellent. And for all you listeners, just in case you don't know, you can support us on Patreon, and you can get releases early. We're recording this on December 29th, and I just released today episode 0 and episode 1 early. So if you go back in time, you could listen to them early. But otherwise, you're listening to them on the same day as this one's coming out anyways. So, but Mike, the reason why I wanted to have you on this episode is because, you know, we love sequels and we love movies. And that's one of the things that we want to champion and we want to share about this podcast is we want to try and find the good things to talk about them. And while we don't always like all of the sequels, we do want to try and have a positive talk on them because I do think that there are people who like at least something about all of these movies. You know, for example, like I'm a big champion of the Children of the Corn series, and I'm trying to get everybody to watch Children of the Corn, but nobody's taken me up on that offer yet. I don't know why, but it's good. And the reason why we wanted to have you on it was because you love this movie. You love Mission Impossible 2. So why don't you, without getting into too much about the film and your opinions on the film, why don't you tell us a bit of your history on watching Mission Impossible 2 the first time, and maybe why you love it so much and why it holds a special place in your heart?
Well, I went to see Mission Impossible 1 on the sneak preview, you know, which opened the night before the movie opened. I still remember going to see that at North Riverside. I believe it was theater number 3, but it could have been theater number 2. I'm not 100% positive on that. But regardless, I remember seeing that, and even though I didn't particularly like the movie back then, I was really, really into the whole experience and the idea that this was the start of the summer movie season. It was really the first summer where I went to see everything. You know, the year before I saw, like Generations in, late 94 and then Batman Forever in 95. And those are basically the only movies that I saw prior to the summer of 96. In summer of 96, I'm just like, I'm going to see every single movie no matter what. And I did. And, Twister aside, Mission Impossible was really the start of that. So because of that, I always sort of thought of that as being like a summer blockbuster, almost like the quintessential summer blockbuster. And by the time Mission Impossible 2 came out, I was working as a projectionist at a movie theater, and I had just started the year before, and I still remember, like, Christmas Day is when the trailer debuted. Christmas Day, 1999, the trailer debuted, and we got the posters, and the posters were these beautiful, like, glossy finished posters, which was really, really weird and kind of pointless for a movie poster, but it was so slick, and it really just sort of spoke to that summer blockbuster thing, that the original had for me. And seeing how it was directed by John Woo, like in the trailer, like it looked so different from the original, and it was so action-packed, and it was so influenced by The Matrix, seemingly, and all this other stuff, that I couldn't wait for this movie. And, we ended up getting it at the movie theater, and I showed it as a projectionist. Again, now here, it's like the first, summer blockbuster that I showed as a projectionist in a lot of ways. And it was sort of like history repeating itself, but from a different angle for me. Once again, Mission Impossible is the quintessential summer blockbuster. And I loved it. I loved every little bit of it. And I mean, we'll get into why from a movie standpoint, but outside of the movie, it had such an important sort of place in my personal movie watching history or movie presenting history that, that's a big part of why I still love it to this day.
Yeah, so excellent. Right on. Now, I'm going to ask a question. Now, I've heard a lot of stories from you because I've listened to basically all your podcasts. So you got a special story about your Laserdisc version of this. Am I correct?
Well, I never had it on Laserdisc.
Okay, I thought you... Okay, so the story that I thought it was is I thought you got a Laserdisc copy of this autographed by Brandon Braga. And,
Well, I got the Blu-ray autographed by Brandon Braga. I got my Generations Laserdisc autographed by Brandon Braga and Ron Moore. But
okay.
Because that was my number one priority. The first convention that I was at where he was there, I brought in the Generations Laserdisc, and then I got Ron Moore to sign it a little while later. But he was at a thing at Northwestern, I think it was, where they were doing some sort of basically science fiction convention, essentially a Star Trek convention at Northwestern. And he was the guest of honor. So I'm okay, well, I need to get something to sign. I mean, it's become so hard now that everything's digital and everything. And also because, I'm not 12, so it's really what am I going to do with an autograph, But it's almost you have to have it just because I want to go up to him and be hey, I liked your movie. You know what I mean?
It's a conversation starter. It gives you an excuse to engage.
Yes. So I really, really, really wanted him to sign Mission Impossible 2, but I knew kind of the history of it, and I was kind of if I hand this to him, he might just be what the heck is your problem? Only he wouldn't say heck. And I got Cosmos as a backup. And I had both of them in my hand, and I'm waiting in line right behind John Tenuto, by the way. And I'm which do I give him? And at the end of the day, I was just screw it. I've got to follow my heart and give him Mission Impossible 2. And I'm so glad that I did, because he's oh, Mission Impossible 2. He's we were basically just making Notorious, because Notorious is my favorite movie. And I'm I know, that was the joke with me and my friends. This is Notorious, but with, John Woo and the whole thing. And he's yeah, Notorious is my favorite movie. And I've remade it 3 times in my career. Once here, once in 24, and once in Salem. And this is the first time. And I'm yeah, it's amazing. I love this movie. So I still have my Blu-ray of Mission Impossible 2 sitting on my shelf because it's signed by Brandon Braga. So
nice. I love it.
Yeah.
What a great story. Excellent. Right on. Well, one great story to another. Zach Moore, give us some trivia on the film.
Well, we'll get into the trivia just one second. I do have a couple of corrections from the first episode that I must say.
Oh, I thought you were
not you,
okay.
Mike.
All right, cool.
Yeah, actually, I have some corrections for Mike's personal story he just saw. No, so just in our first episode, I said that Robert De Niro was up for the Jim Phelps role. That was a misspeak. It's actually Michael Douglas, because Pacino was up as well. So I kind of conflated them. They always go together. So I could see Michael Douglas a lot better, in that role than De Niro. Also, I couldn't remember the other agent's name, the other main guy, and it's Kittredge. I kept getting it wrong. I called him Kiesner just to joke because I couldn't remember his name. I know it started with a K. And then also, I gave it 4 out of 5.
No editing.
I am changing my rating. We discussed this. I'm changing my rating to 3.5 out of 5 because I can't keep raising the ceiling for these movies. And if I give that a 4, everything gets a 4, everything gets a 5. So that is, I would accept Mission Impossible 1 3.5 out of 5 times. So those are my corrections from our first episode. Now,
it's Zach. It's okay that you don't remember his name. Like, I can't even remember Tom Hanks' character's name in this movie.
Anyway, moving on.
Oh, come on, that was a great joke.
Yeah, it was a joke. So moving on. So Mission Impossible 2, right? Mission Impossible 2 is a sequel to Mission Impossible 1. So write that down, folks. But so Mission Impossible 1 had a budget of $80 million, took in $457 million worldwide. Mission Impossible 2 had a budget of $125 million and took in $565 million worldwide. So that kind of shows you, that the budget was higher, but the intake was higher, so the franchise is still kind of going up that ramp. It's not suffering any fatigue just yet, at least at the box office. But the movie was delayed in getting started because Tom Cruise was working on Eyes Wide Shut with Stanley Kubrick, and of course, the notorious Stanley Kubrick, the artist, everything is so particular and things take forever. So you wonder why there was such a long gap between Mission Impossible 1 and 2. That is a factor. Brian De Palma was asked to return. He declined. So actually, Tom Cruise sought out John Woo, and he appreciated the fact that he had such a different look, because John Woo was initially concerned that his look was not going to mesh with Brian De Palma, what Brian De Palma had established in the first film. But Tom Cruise at this point is a big producer of the franchise, so he gets to call out the shots. And he had said, look, we want these to be episodic. We want it to be different. That's totally cool. So you do your thing. And do his thing he did. Because you see a lot of John Woo isms, the pigeons and the doves and stuff, and you've seen that in Face Off. Similar, actually, to the battle on the beach at the end as well. Just the slow mo, all it's very John Woo-esque. If you're familiar with his body of work. So but that being said, there was lots of clashes during production with John Woo, and he was the only director not asked to return after the end of his film. Every director and every other Mission Impossible was asked to return. None of them did until Christopher McQuarrie with 5 and 6. But John Woo was not asked to return, which I found.
Who did he have clashes with?
Well, just the I believe the cinematographer for one. They had some issues, and then also this isn't like a real clash, but Tom Cruise wanted to do a lot of his stunts, so I think Tom Cruise lied to the insurance company that they would have a lot of stuntmen do it, but he did about 90% of the stunts, as he does, as he's become to known as doing the stunts, and that's a big pull from the pull for people to go see him in these films, really. Tom Cruise and Paula Wagner, one of the other producers, they wanted this film to have a lot more action, right? Because they felt the first one lacked action. And that's, true. Objectively, there's not a lot. This movie is way more action in it, and that's where the John Woo component comes in as well. So another thing is they talking about the some of the cast. Anthony Hopkins, right? He's the mission commander in this one. That role was actually offered to Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen turned it down because he had a theater gig at the time, and he turned it down, even though it was a small supporting role. But it turned out for the best, because had he accepted the role, all of the overruns of the production running late would have kept him from playing Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Magneto in X-Men. So, good call, Ian McKellen. Unfortunately, Dunray Scott was not so lucky. He accepted the role as the main villain in this film. He was infamously cast as Wolverine in X-Men, but he was replaced at the last minute by Hugh Jackman. One of those great what-if stories. I don't think Dunray Scott would have stuck around for 17 years to play Wolverine, but that's one of those great what-ifs, slipped into that alternate universe.
I don't think that's a great what-if story. I'm content with the way that turned out.
Now, the film's female lead, Thandie Newton, Tom Cruise's then wife, Nicole Kidman, suggested her to star in the film, and they had actually appeared together in Interview with the Vampire before, so there was a working history there. So they actually went and cast her before anything else had gone on. Now, John Woo's first cut of the film allegedly clocked in at 3.5 hours. The studio told him you got to cut it down to 2. Gave him that notorious 2-hour constraint. We've heard that floating around a lot in movies today. But
notorious?
yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so to that point, well, the actual film was